Hey everybody, welcome back to the Wolf Pit with another episode of What Are We Eating? Today, I'm trying Wert's homegrown canned beef. Yeah, you heard me right, beef out of a can. When I think about beef out of a can, I immediately think of corned beef or corned beef hash, or a Dollar Tree atrocity with TVP and 1,000 other ingredients. But not homegrown, farm-raised, completely drug and GMO-free, shredded, fully cooked, and ready-to-eat beef packed in a BPA-free can. Wert's also has homegrown shredded pork in a can, which I'll try in a future video. Both the beef and the pork come in 14.5 ounce cans, which is what I'm using today, and they also come in 28 ounce cans. This 14.5 ounce can is right around $13, which initially you say, wow, that's pricey, but you're paying for the quality and the fact that this has a shelf life of over 25 years. Which means in the event of a national emergency, you and your family would still have high quality, nutritious food. That's something you simply cannot put a price tag on. Now let's go over the ingredients, and you won't believe the amount of ingredients in here, so make sure you're sitting down. The only ingredients are beef and sea salt. There's no junk, like TVP, fillers, meat glue, or other garbage. It's 100% natural beef and salt. I think this will be the product with the fewest ingredients I've ever done a What Are We Eating video on. There's 14 1-ounce servings per can. A typical serving is between 3 to 4 ounces, so let's do the serving size as a 4-ounce serving, which would have 320 calories, 14 grams of total fat, 6 grams of saturated fat, 120 milligrams of cholesterol, 440 milligrams of sodium, no carbohydrates, no fiber, no sugars, and 44 grams of protein. So let's crack open the cans and see what's inside. Okay, here it is. And if you think it looks gross, you need to cook more often at home, because it really looks no different than a leftover roast or any kind of beef in general with congealed fat. I'll tell you what, the fat in the can impresses me, because like I say all the time, fat is good. It gives flavor and moisture. And there's actually enough fat to make a roux or gravy without adding additional fat. I love that fact, and I love gravy. But everyone loves gravy, right? If you love gravy, smash that like button and tell me what your favorite kind of gravy is below. But we're going to have to save the gravy making for a future video, because today I'm using this meat to make cheesesteak sandwiches for my family. So I'm going to use 3 cans, so if it's any good, we can have leftovers too. But there's a ton of quick and easy things you can make with this meat, especially quick weeknight meals, like beef and noodles, beef stroganoff, beef pot pie, chili, nachos, burritos, tacos, taquitos, open-faced roast beef sandwiches, French dip sandwiches, Italian beef sandwiches, sloppy joe, barbecue, etc. The options are limitless. So once all 3 cans were in the skillet, I turned the heat up to medium-high, and we started to break the meat apart. Now since this is already cooked, all I really want to do is heat it through. And once it's heated through, I'll see if we need to drain any of the fat. By the way, I don't think I mentioned this, but the meat is canned raw and cooked in the cans, so all the juices you see are natural meat juices. While that's heated through, let's get our veggies sauteed down for our cheesesteak sandwiches. Now you, the people from Philly, please don't hammer me and say this is not a Philly cheesesteak. I know it's not a Philly cheesesteak, which is why I'm just calling it a cheesesteak. I just wanted to nip that in the bud because you, the people, aren't bashful about correcting me, which is why I love you, the people, so much. So in the skillet, I have a big ol' onion, 2 medium bell peppers, olive oil, and a little bit of kosher salt. So I'm going to saute this for a few minutes over medium-high heat until they begin to sweat. Once the onions and peppers began to sweat, I added sliced mushrooms, and fresh, homegrown, store-bought minced garlic right out of the jar. Now continue to saute until the vegetables are done to your liking. Once all the vegetables are done to your liking, set them aside. I wanted to try a piece of the beef by itself. So I grabbed a spoon and scooped up a piece. And it doesn't look bad at all. And the aroma smells just like I have a pot roast in the oven. So into my pie hole and down my gullet it went.
It's really good. It actually tastes like pot roast.
Yes, it tastes just like pot roast, which is a very good thing. Very moist, flavorful, and melts in your mouth tender. But I don't want my cheesesteak tasting just like pot roast. So I tweaked the flavor a bit with a little bit of steak rub. It's looking, smelling, and tasting great to me. I decided not to drain the little bit of fat that was left, because a cheesesteak just isn't a cheesesteak unless you have juices and fat running down your arm when you take a bite. Next we add the onions, peppers, mushrooms, and garlic. Then we gave it a good mix to get everything incorporated. Once everything was well incorporated, remove everything from the skillet. Then add back whatever amount you need for sandwiches. And I did this kind of backwards. I should have kept the meat and veggies separate until this point, but oh well, it'll work. I'm doing 2 different cheesesteaks today. One traditional on bread, and as most of you already know, I mostly eat low carb, so I'll also be making a breadless cheesesteak. So we put enough meat and vegetables back in the pan for 2 cheesesteaks. Next we added a couple slices of provolone cheese, or as some people in the shallow end of the gene pool call it, provolone cheese. We placed the fresh baguette on top of the mixture to steam for a bit. Now let the cheese melt, and then it's time to eat. And then Megan did a really good job of scooping up the mixture into the bread without missing much. She's a natural pro. Me, on the other hand, that would have gone all over the place. So here's our finished cheesesteaks, one traditional with bread and one low carb. They both look good to me, and even though I don't eat bread often, I just had to take a bite of the traditional one. And that looks pretty darn good to me. So I dislocated my jaw and went in for a big old bite. And my reaction is pretty clear on how I liked it.
That's really good.
Megan also took a bite and she loved it too. Next, it was time for the breadless version.
That is surprisingly good. It's moist. It's very tender. I like it better without the bread. But either way, that is freaking awesome.
Now I'd be lying to you, the people, if I said it tasted just like ribeye steak and a cheesesteak. But it didn't at all. It was even better. This sandwich was more like a hybrid sandwich, a combination of cheesesteak, roast beef, Italian beef, and a French dip sandwich all in one. The meat was very flavorful, very moist, melt in your mouth tender, and oh, did I mention, it was absolutely delicious. Megan and I just couldn't wait for another bite. And yes, even though I love bread, I don't really miss it, and I actually preferred the breadless cheesesteak over the traditional cheesesteak with bread. I'm not sure how, or even if, it was possible for this to turn out any better. I'm not a prepper or survivalist, but I'm gonna be sure I have a 6-pack or 2 of this canned meat. Not really for an emergency, but for one of those nights when I just don't feel like cooking a meal from scratch. Thank you all very much for watching. Please don't forget to like this video and subscribe, and I'll see you soon.